Now, Ryan, you're a tough act to follow. Congratulations. Makes me so proud to hear your story. I want to say that the invitation to be with all of you today is truly a gift for my heart and soul. And I just appreciate who you are, what you do, what you stand for. I loved your line, Ryan, when you said I had to believe it before I saw it, right? It's so fundamental, right? And I really want to share with you the work that I've been doing for more than 4 decades, and it's grounded in that understanding that we are governed to a large measure by our beliefs. Beliefs, in many ways, shape our reality and our experience. And you all are enabling young people, thousands, tens of thousands, to see themselves differently, to believe differently. And when we shift our beliefs, we shift our experience. You know that. So, you all have been sitting and listening all day. Feels like it. But so, I'm gonna, before I dive into the science of what I want to share with you, I'm gonna invite you to stand up and stretch. Yep. Don't hurt anybody, just stretch up. And turn to the person next to you and let them know how much you appreciate them. All right, y'all come back now. Have a seat. Very good. I've been working to change some of the conditions that stand in the way of progress for communities and individuals, and more recently, I think for humanity as a whole, for a very, very long time. I left the W.K. Kellogg Foundation in 2017. I had been there leading their work on racial equity and racial healing, their food, health, and well-being work, their place-based work around the country in New Mexico and New Orleans and Mississippi. But I had been gifted with a property, and I say gifted because I believe these wonderful experiences that we have in life are gifts in many ways from the universe. Now, I have a mortgage, so it wasn't really a gift, but I managed to find and acquire a property in Maryland that was, for me, a dream come true. It was 3 acres, forest, old-growth forest, and it was fed by artesian springs. And there was this huge natural pond that the springs flowed into. And so when I first discovered it, I knew then that I wanted to turn it into a center for healing and nature, where people could come and be with nature, and they didn't have to drive for hours, right? It's still on the metro line, which is amazing, right? And so that was my goal. And when they offered me the position at WKKF, which is in Michigan, Battle Creek, Michigan. Anybody been to Battle Creek, Michigan? Yeah, it wasn't on my bucket list, I can assure you. But I had this challenge, this wonderful opportunity to be a force to distribute hundreds of millions of dollars, and this place that touched my heart that I wanted to turn into a center for healing and nature. So what do? Like any red-blooded African-American woman, I did both. So for 10 years, I got on a plane every week and I commuted to Battle Creek, Michigan, and I came home and I worked on the Center for Healing and Nature on the weekends. Now the center is named the Intianu Center. And Intianu is a word from the Native American culture, and it means noble spirit. Intianu is the name of my firstborn child. She died as an infant. And so I wanted the center to memorialize her, to thank her for being the impetus for my life's work. Because it was in losing her that I became personally aware of the burden of racial hierarchy. Now, I didn't know when I lost Ntianu that there was this phenomenon called infant mortality and maternal mortality. You know, when you give it that label, it sort of disconnects it from the personal pain of the experience. But I was catapulted into that world, and so I spent the next 10, 15 years learning everything I could and working very hard clinically to help women have healthy babies and to prevent needless loss of life. And I did all kinds of work, holistic work, nutritional work, social program design, and this went on for many decades. Ultimately, I came to understand that the driving force for health inequity in our country, the driving force, now we can keep trying to fix what's broken, but the driving force behind incarceration inequities, health inequities, economic inequities, the driving force I came to know was the absurd belief in a hierarchy of human value. Now sit with that for a minute. You see, this country was built on the idea that the human family, that there was a taxonomy of value in the human family. And it's hierarchical, based on physical characteristics. So if you looked a certain way, you set up at the top of that hierarchy. And if you looked another way, you sat at the bottom, and various gradations in between. Now that's my very fancy way of saying racism. Let's be clear, that's what it is. But racism fundamentally is a belief system. Now, we have had civil war, we have had civil rights movement, we've had legislation, we've had Supreme Court decisions, we've had all manner of efforts to fix the consequences, but we haven't ever dealt with the belief itself. So I invite each and every one of you in your glorious work on behalf of humanity to become part of a national effort that is determined. Now, I'm a Star Trek fan. I know I'm aging myself. Do we have any Star Trek fans in the room? Yes. All right. So I'm inviting you to be part of the force that is going to jettison. Now, you know on Star Trek, when they jettison something, it's gone, except for Dr. Spock. Of course, he came back. But I'm inviting you to be part of the force in this country that's working to jettison this fallacy of human hierarchy, this fallacy of a way to devalue human beings. But more important than jettisoning that belief, we have to replace it with the truth. The truth is that we are one sacred, interconnected human family. We are one sacred, interconnected human community. And we've got to learn how to honor that reality. And it is a learning. We've lost it in this country. We really never had it. You know, the effort, the culminating effort, I've designed many social programs over the years, but the culminating effort was called Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation. TRHT. And I'll tell you about all the institutions around the country that are involved in it, and I hope you will become involved with it as well. But some people, we modeled this effort after the truth and reconciliation efforts that have happened all over the world. How many of you have ever heard of South Africa's TRC? Actually, there have been over 40 TRCs around the world. And folks said, well, it's time for America to do one, absolutely. So we looked at all the 40 that had been done, 44 to be accurate, and we said, what are the lessons that we can learn from those efforts so that we can create something that will set America on a path to embracing our humanity, all of us equally. And we knew we couldn't call it reconciliation. Why couldn't we call it reconciliation? Because to reconcile means to come back together. Have we ever been together? No. This country was founded and grounded on the fallacy of a hierarchy of human value. So that's why we say truth, racial healing, and transformation, giving ourselves the opportunity to envision, to believe, to create a new future for this country that is driven by and motivated by our love for one another equally as human beings. That's our work. And as I sat with you today and listened and really felt in a palpable way the love that you all have for one another and the goodness and the care and the kindness that you are showing to these young people, it was really just a great moment for me in these critical, divisive times in this country. I think it was your board chair that said that you all were a kept secret in a sense. The country doesn't know about you. The country should. They should know about this work. They should know what you're doing. And so I would say use social media and Twitter and all the other things to elevate the simple truth of the value of all the people that you serve and all the people that are involved in serving. Now, it isn't that easy to change the way people believe and think. If it were easy, we might have done it a long time ago. Oh, we've done it episodically, but we need a curriculum. We need a movement in this country that takes away the shadow that's in front of us and allows us to look into the eyes of one another, and as Albert Einstein reminded us, to learn to see ourselves in the face of the perceived other. That's the work. One of the keys to the approach to this that I've developed, I call it RX or prescription racial healing. And I talk about prescription, I name it prescription because it is about healing. It is about helping to make us more whole as human beings and as a human family. Now, when Mary Ellen invited me to speak with you today, she was excited because I'm one of the few people probably in the country that understands the intersection between access to nature and the power of healing, particularly racial healing. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how these things intersect, and I'm going to ask the timekeepers to let me know when I have 10 minutes left. But the intersection is that when we are exposed to adverse experiences, when we are exposed to adversity, it's a whole movement now, right? But you hear these stories from your core members of the year. When we are exposed to adversity, we actually experience a dampening, if you will, a lowering of our immune system capacity. When we are immersed in chronic stress, that chronic stress makes us more vulnerable to not only chronic disease, but also to inflammatory and infectious disease. And so the body wants to be healthy. It is designed to be healthy, and we have two basic autonomic responses and automatic responses. We have fight or flight, as you all know, which is associated with stress, with worry, and anxiety. And then we have rest and digest, which is the opposite response by the parasympathetic nervous system, right? So as a holistic physician and practitioner, my work was to help people bring their bodies into balance, right? So they could increase their rest and digest capabilities, and they could decrease their fight or flight capabilities and responses. Now, the beautiful thing about nature, and there are over 1,000 refereed journal articles that you could find. If you go to the Children in Nature Network, to their research library, you'll see The evidence is in, it's no question that our time in nature increases our parasympathetic nervous system, our rest and digest capabilities, and it decreases our stress response. So when you told the story of anxiety and depression, your time in nature was literally freeing up the mechanisms within your own body to overcome the anxiety and the depression. When we are in nature, we are aligned with natural forces. The plants give off phytochemicals, the trees give off phytochemicals, the earth is embracing us with necessary chemicals, and if the water is moving, the water is literally changing the negative ion concentration in the air, and we are literally breathing in more healing air. Now, you know, when we try to get healthy, we start changing what we eat, start changing our exercise patterns, we start changing, many things. But few people realize that the body can live for 3 weeks without food. It can live for 3 days without water, but it can only live for 3 minutes without air. And so this focus on breathing deeply and breathing healthy air deeply, it's a powerful force for healing and unleashing our natural capabilities for doing that. So not only are you giving the love and the connection and the support and the belief and the affirmation to these young people that are engaged, but you're also giving them an opportunity to have and to be immersed in the healing forces that the universe has provided for us, and that is a wonderful thing. Now, in the last few years, you've received a grant I've learned from the Kellogg Foundation to work on unconscious bias and racism as it exists. It is real. The framework for the Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation effort, it's got 5 basic components. The first is narrative change. I was so proud that you honored the land as was stewarded and cared for by the indigenous people of this place when you started. That's what we call narrative change. That's reminding ourselves of the roots and honoring the millennia, the thousands of years that people lived on this land and cared for it, and the history they experienced when the encounter came with Europeans. Narrative change, how many of you have seen the movie Harriet? If you haven't, I strongly suggest that you see it. It's an amazing story of courage and resilience and perseverance and leadership of a woman who really changed in many ways the course of this country. A woman who escaped slavery because she believed that she could, and she did. That's narrative change. The other part of the Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation work is what we call racial healing. And that's when people get together in diverse circles and diverse communities, and they learn skills of empathy and creating compassionate spaces and sharing their true stories with one another and engaging in ways that make it impossible to continue to believe in the fallacy of human hierarchy. But then after we do the racial healing work and the narrative change work, we asked ourselves, well, if this idea of a human value hierarchy is a lie, and it is, we are all equal in our worth and value, then how has it been sustained for centuries? We came up with 3 pillars that sustain it. One is separation. As long as we can remain separate from one another, we can believe stereotypes and fallacies. The other is our legal system. Make no mistake about it, the legal system was designed to maintain that hierarchy, civil and criminal. And then finally, the economy. Our economy was designed and fueled by this false belief. So those are the 5 pieces of the framework. Communities are doing this work all over this country, all the way from Alaska to Buffalo, New York. People are coming together within their communities, working with that framework to transform their communities And I hope some of your organizations, some of your core nonprofits will lead some of that work within the communities in which you live. We have over 40 foundations that are supporting it. It is a wonderful work. It is the counterweight to the division that's increasing in our country now. Because this fallacy, this notion, is rearing its head in ways that none of us could have imagined. So I invite you to be part of the movement that will eliminate, that will jettison the fallacy of a hierarchy of human value, will show America that we can love one another, we can see ourselves in the face of the perceived other, and we can create a new America that will actualize the aspirational goals, the aspirational idea that we are all created equal and endowed by our Creator with the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I'm going to invite the video to be shown now. This video reflects a community of almost 1,000 people around the country who are doing this work. It was produced by the Kellogg Foundation, and we'll go out with the video. And I thank you all very much for your attention today.